Hey guys! Tonight we're lighting a single guttering tallow candle and following one of history's least celebrated, most essential night stalkers, the castle rat catcher. You know, the bloke who kept plague-bearing whiskers from gnawing holes in the royal pantry. Before we slip down those torchlit stairs together, take a second to nudge that like button and subscribe. But only if these slow-burn rambles through messy medieval corners are your kind of lullaby. And absolutely drop a note in the comments telling me where you're listening from and what ungodly hour it is. I love seeing our little campfire dots blink on around the planet. Now draw your blanket up, let that fan hum like distant wind through castle slits, and lean into the darkness with me. First stop, the grain room. Barrels bristle against the walls like patient soldiers bound by rusty hoops. You can almost hear the hum of stored life. Wheat, rye, oats, worth more than silver in a land that knows famine too well. Tonight, the grain pulses with tiny heartbeats you pretend not to feel. Willen signals, candles out. Darkness folds over you. Your ears stretch, straining past your own breath, until there's only scratching, the papery whisper of rats plotting supper. Willen unleashes Grimlet, a squeal, then another, a thud as a furry body hits a barrel. You swivel the candle back up. Amber light etches carnage. Grimlet's jaws clamp a rat bigger than your forearm. Blood ribbons across the floor. Another rat darts for the crack beneath the door. Willen flicks his curved knife, so fast you question whether it left his hand at all, and the blade pins the animal by the tail. He moves like he's always known exactly where it would dash, like he's memorized their map. "One notch," he murmurs, tossing the corpse into your counting sack. You make the first cut on the tally stick with a shard of chalk. 6 hours until dawn, and already the sack stinks of copper and rot. But the job isn't just massacre, it's prevention, keeping the next wave from feasting on barley and contagion. Willen reaches into his pouch, scatters a powder circle around the base of a barrel. "Ground wormwood," he says. "Rats loathe the smell. They think it's the reek of their dead." You inhale and gag. Maybe he's right. The second layer is the refuse chute. Castlefolk toss bones, bread heels, fish heads, anything unfit for delicate taste buds, down a long wooden slide that lands in a pit the size of a chapel. You stand at the rim, torch sputtering, staring into a stew of slime and carcasses. It bubbles though there's no fire underneath, only slow fermentation. Rats crawl like living shadows over the sludge. Some swim. You taste bile. Willen hands you a sling. "Pebbles?" you ask. He grins, revealing a mouthful of teeth shaped by years of gnawing jerky. "Not pebbles." He plucks a fistful of dried pea pods from another pouch. "Hollow, won't kill, but they'll run the direction we want." He slings one into the pit. The pod smacks a slab of bone and pops. Rats scatter up a board plank leaning to the rampart walkway. That's where you and Grimlet wait. When they scramble over the top, panic-blind, Grimlet grabs them. One by one, the tail tally grows. "Guided hunt," Willen calls it. Shepherd and slaughterer. Between kills, he teaches you language of droppings, size, moisture, how the pale ones say a rat's been nibbling plaster, how the pellet clusters mark a nursing nest. He can date a dropping to the hour. Rat genealogist, you joke. He doesn't laugh. "Every pellet is prophecy," he answers. Midway through the night, you break for victuals. A loaf so hard it could stun a hog, smeared with lard, spiced by the peppercorn specks you saved all week. You eat sitting on inverted buckets beneath the castle chapel. Above, the Baron's family prays for salvation from plague, never knowing the plague is currently dripping from your burlap sack. You wonder if rat catchers ever get credited in sermons. Doubtful. Willen pulls out a wooden whistle carved with cryptic runes. The sound it makes is too high for your ears. It's meant for Grimlet. He'll come even if he's in the guts of a rat warren, Willen claims. You ask if the whistle works on anything else. His brow furrows like a plowed field. Maybe on men who've forgotten fear. By the time you finish the grain stores, the refuse pit, the laundry cellar, and the stables, yes, even prized war horses share fleas with rodents, the sack bulges, 42 notches. But numbers don't tell the real horror. The parasites hiding in those pelts, tiny black bombs waiting to detonate fever. You remember old Father Giles, the mason who repaired the gatehouse last winter. One nip, 3 days of groaning, and they burned his clothes out by the orchard. Willen says the fleas jump ship when their host cools. He tosses fresh lavender on the corpses to slow them, not for mercy, for you. Near dawn, you climb the north tower to dump the bodies into the moat. Water will drown the fleas, Willen says. But first he rows out in a skiff to scatter the lavender-strewn pile into the current. You ask why not just fling them from the battlements and be done. He leans forward, candle sputtering in his face. Because ducks feed at dawn. You blink. And ducks feed the castle. Right. Plague ducks would rather not be on the menu. Back on the wharf, you wash your hands in a basin of vinegar, wincing at the sting of unseen scratches. The vinegar smells like a tavern floor, but Willen nods approval. Clean is relative down here. Finally, you hand the tally stick to the steward. He squints, counts twice, grunts satisfaction, drops 6 halfpennies into your palm, and raps your knuckles as though you stole them. Behind him, the rising sun stains arrow slits crimson. The castle stirs, maids yawning, guards swapping shifts, cooks rekindling fires. No one notices the rat catcher limp off toward the barracks, cloak soaked through with moat water, mind already plotting tonight's routes. You return to your straw pallet above the piggery. As you drift to sleep, the distant chapel bell tolls prime, calling good folk to morning prayers. You wonder if anyone up there begs deliverance for the souls of rats, or if that mercy is reserved for nobler beasts. Your dreams, when they come, are dark tunnels and flashing teeth. We're back in that same gray dusk, friend, though a full day has crawled by since we last hauled rat corpses to the moat. The sun is sagging behind chimney turrets, bleeding pink onto slate, and every sensible soul in Baron Redwald's keep is drifting toward benches and trenchers of rabbit stew. But not you. You've slept exactly 3 hours, woken twice by phantom squeaks in your ears, and now you're lacing stiff boots that still smell of vinegar. Your palms ache where the tally stick rubbed blisters, and a strange knot has lodged behind your eyes, equal parts dread and excitement. Willen said tonight would be different. He didn't explain, which usually means something ugly is brewing in the crawl spaces. You pad across the courtyard under banners that flap like tired lungs. There's mud everywhere from an afternoon storm, and puddles reflect torchlight so perfectly that each flame seems doubled, one burning above, one drowning below. You wonder which reflection you are. The steward tosses you a fresh tally stick, its notches pristine, like hope. He hisses that the lady herself complained of scratching under the floorboards of her solar. Delicate ears, delicate temper. Translation: If she sees so much as one whisker, someone's head will spin, and it won't be hers. Willen is waiting by the bakery ovens, hood drawn low, the ferret's whiskered snout poking out of his sleeve. He's carving something into a sliver of ash wood with that same curved knife. Tiny sigils, spirals, unreadable shapes. You ask what for. He says, bait that doesn't rot. Before you can pry further, he gestures toward a narrow postern door rarely used by anyone but pages on errand. Tonight we go inside the walls, he murmurs, tapping the stone. You thought you'd already been inside. Grain rooms, refuse pits, the works. But he means literally inside. The crawl spaces between masonry skins, the forgotten service passages, the skeleton ribs of the castle where stale air never stirs. He passes you a stub of tallow wrapped in cloth. No open flame, he warns. Smoke has nowhere to go. Keep it low, keep it quick, keep breathing small. Then he shoulders through the postern, and you follow, heart tripping over itself. The passage is barely wider than your shoulders. You move sideways like a crab, stone grazing elbows. Mortar flakes drift onto your tongue every time you inhale. Behind, the door thuds shut, swallowing torchlight. Now the only illumination is your trembling stump of candle, its halo painting ribs of damp stone that vanish 3 paces ahead. It feels as though you're crawling into the castle's ear. Willen stops where 2 walls meet, wedges his knife into a seam, and levers out a fist-sized block. Cold air sighs through the gap, carrying a smell like moldy parchment and old cheese. You squeeze through. Instantly, the temperature drops. It's as if the castle hoards winter in here for private pleasure. The floor is nothing but crossed timbers, bridging a gap that plunges, unseen, to God knows where. Somewhere below, water drips, a slow, mocking clock. Grimlet scampers ahead, claws clicking on joists. You and Willen crouch, balancing on beams, probing forward. Every breath you take, the void below seems to inhale with you, an echo that feels wrong-sided. It's quiet at first, almost tranquil. Then the scratching begins, soft, rhythmic, like quills writing blasphemies. Your skin prickles. Candlelight catches a rope of tails slithering along a beam overhead. 7, 8, 10 individuals moving as one. They vanish through a crack. They're using the same rafters you are. Rat highways in 3-dimensional dark. Willen whistles low through his teeth, not the ferret call, another thing. The rats freeze, maybe confused by the unfamiliar sound, maybe calculating. That hesitation is everything. Grimlet leaps, latches onto the hindmost tail, pulls a squeal into the open. Suddenly, the void is alive with squeaks, claws, tumbling bodies. You swing your sack under the beam like a fisherman with a net. 2 rats drop in by accident, thrashing furiously. Their eyes glow red in candlelight, little embers of hatred. One sinks teeth into your wrist. You bite your own tongue not to yell. Sound carries through stone. You slam the sack against a beam until the gnawing stops. Breath ragged, you scratch a notch with a charcoal splinter. 3 more for the stick. The second of who knows how many tonight. Willen is studying something on the timber, a smear of greasy yellow. He touches it, sniffs. Kitchen lard. They've been foraging leftovers from the ladies' pastries. He licks the residue, grimaces. Sweetened. They found sugar. A grim revelation. Sugar is precious, imported from lands you only know by rumor. If rats discovered the sugar cask, the Baron's wrath will blister. Not your problem? Oh, but it will be. When nobles lose luxuries, they claw down the nearest scapegoats. Rat catchers sit high on that list. You press on, deeper into the intestinal maze. The candle sputters, fat dribbles onto your thumb, hissing. Rafters branch like roots. Willen chooses left without pausing, as though guided by invisible road signs. You ask how he knows the way. He says, "Rats run with purpose. They map the warmth. Follow warmth, find hordes." It's true. The air ahead grows less icy, tinged with a faint cinnamon scent. You're approaching the castle pastry kitchen from the backside. Through a knothole you spy the kitchen proper, a high-ceilinged chamber glowing orange, empty now except for embers, cooling pies, and the snoring figure of the pastry chef collapsed in a corner, flour dusted across his mustache like frost. But you're not entering the kitchen floor. You're above it, in the crawl space above the arched oven vaults. Heat seeps through stone, creating a cozy attic where rats hold midnight banquets. Evidence litters the beams, walnut shells, chewed parchment, a sticky trickle of crystallized honey. Willen's eyes gleam. "Mother nest," he whispers. Mother nest means breeding ground, means dozens of pink, hairless pups fattening on stolen almonds. It also means fleas breeding by the thousands. He unrolls a bundle, small clay pots stoppered with wax. "Sulfur and rosemary," he says. "Smoke drives them, scent confuses them, we catch them on the run." He embeds 3 pots among beams, slices the wax with his knife, lights each with the candle. Smoke coils out, acrid but not fiery. Immediately a tide of gray bodies burst from crevices, pouring toward the one gap you left unblocked. The route back toward the postern exit where your sack lies open like a hungry maw. It's a calculated stampede. You scoop, swat, stomp when necessary. Grimlet weaves figure 8s, jaws snapping rhythmically. The air fills with screeches and that coppery tang until you taste iron, though you've bitten nothing. Minutes stretch elastic, then snap. The exodus dwindles. Smoke thickens until you cough black stains onto your sleeve. Willen plugs the pots with rags to stifle flame, then gestures retreat. By the time you crawl into cooler passages, your eyes stream tears. But the tally stick now bears 20 new notches, and the sack is so heavy it drags lines in the dust. Emerging through the postern, you almost collapse, lungs gulping fresh night air that smells of rain-washed manure. Willen doesn't pause. He strides straight to the buttery. Apparently new orders. The steward caught a rat under the ale casks earlier. If booze goes bad, men will mutiny quicker than if bread runs out. In the buttery, barrels tower like squat giants. The floor is damp with spilled ale and sawdust. Here the game changes. Rats arrive drunk, slower but unpredictable. Some charge you squealing, fearless. Willen calls them ale braves, says they can chew through a boot if cornered. One such champion lunges at your shin. You parry with the tally stick, snapping it mid-shaft. Now the count is worthless. Willen just grins. "We'll remember." You hope he means he'll remember, because numbers are slipping from your head like water through finger gaps. While you wrestle with Elbraves, Willen kneels by a cracked barrel, sets down one of his rune-carved ash splints. He draws a circle of spilled malt around it, mutters something you can't catch. You shrug, figuring it's another of his superstitions. Until the rats start avoiding that circle, skittering away as though the wood is hot. Willen winks. Oils from ivy root burns their noses. He plucks the splint, pockets it again. Portable no-go zone. Your respect for his craft climbs a notch higher. The night tips toward dawn. Sky through arrow slits pales from black to bruised indigo. That's when emergencies choose to strike. A page dashes into the buttery, eyes wild. Upstairs, the ladies' gallery, tail as long as my arm. He's exaggerating, but panic exaggerates everything. Willen moves faster than you've ever seen, up spiral stairs, 2 at a time, ferret stuffed in his coat. The gallery is a long, timber-floored corridor lined with portraits of grim ancestors. Moonlight filters through colored glass, pooling on rugs worth more than villages. Near the far end, under a tapestry of St. George, you glimpse movement. A rat, yes, but swollen, grotesque, fur patchy, eyes milky. It shuffles rather than runs. Willen tenses. Water rat. You start to correct him. This is no river, but he cuts you off. Moat, sewage breeds them. They crawl through drains, carry disease worse than plague. The rat lurches toward a doorway, beyond which lies the lady's chamber. You sprint, but polished boards betray you, feet slide. Willen reaches first, blocks the threshold with his body. The rat leaps, latches onto his boot leather, teeth punching through. He doesn't cry out. Instead, he flips his knife downward, skewers the rat through spine to floorboards. It spasms, blood painting oak dark. Willen's boot drips red. He kneels, panting. Gone bad inside, he mutters. You realize he's talking about himself. The bite. He pries the rat free, tosses it into your sack. Then he tugs off his boot, examines punctures. Flesh already purpling. You offer to fetch the physician. He snarls. First time you've heard anger from him. Physic? Leeches? They'll bleed me dry and still lose the leg. Fetch ash. Fetch fire. He means cauterize. You race to the hearth and the solar, snatch a poker glowing white. Back in the gallery, Willen braces against the wall, bites down on a strip of leather. You press the poker to the wound. The hiss echoes like a demon sigh, filling the castle with burnt meat stench. He convulses, but never screams. When you pull away, the flesh is charred nearly black, bleeding cauterized. He drops the leather, exhales ragged. Still faster than infection, he says. You half carry him down to the infirmary anyway, ignoring his protests. The nurse, all starch and scowl, applies honey salve and bandage. She asks what creature caused such havoc. Cat, Willen says. She squints, but contradicting rat-catcher lore is beyond her pay grade. She leaves you with a pot of calendula and orders for rest. Willen waits until she's gone, then pushes you aside. Night's not finished. Rats don't clock out. He tries to stand. The leg buckles. His face goes the color of curdled milk. So guess whose promotion arrives early? He presses Grimlet's leash into your hand along with the curved knife. Keep low, don't chase, shepherd, remember the ducks. You swallow. In the sack are 70-something tails. Dawn will bring inspection. Without Willen on his feet, the load is yours. You trudge back toward lower halls, ferret twitching anxiously. Your fear could flood a moat, but there's pride floating in it too. You recall his lessons. Every pellet is prophecy. Worms tell time. Rats run warmth. Warmth, yes, the bakery ovens again. Maybe more survivors. You turn that way, lantern trimmed low. Inside the bakery, you detect no movement at first, only cooling loaves. But bread mounds can hide opportunists. You overturn one basket. 2 small rats burst out. Grimlet springs, netting one. The other darts across flour-dusted tiles toward an open drain you didn't know existed. You give chase, slide, nearly fall. At the drain, rancid air wafts up. You kneel, lantern hovering. Below lies a passage even narrower than crawl spaces. You could ignore it, plug it later. But you've just learned how a single water rat can maim. You can't risk another. You tie the lantern to your belt, lower yourself feet first. The passage is slick, half-circular, carved stone. Slime coats walls, stink burns eyes. You shuffle downward, splashing ankle-deep sewage, following tiny waves where your quarry fled. Behind, Grimlet scurries, more at home than you. Torchlight ahead. No, not torchlight, phosphorescent fungus painting green halos. Within that glow, you see the rat at last, perched on a silt mound, gnawing something shiny. An earring? Gold? Probably pried from some servant's trinket lost to the drain. It regards you with unblinking contempt, as if to say, "This realm is mine."
You ease forward, knife ready. Grimlet darts, the rat leaps sideways, right into a deeper pool, splashes, disappears. You think it's escaped into some burrow. Then the water churns. A shape larger than any rat surges. A stoat? No. Another ferret, feral, mangy, jaws locking onto the rat mid-swim. A ferret missing half its fur, eyes scarred blind white. The creatures thrash, water turns black. Finally, both vanish into the darkness, leaving ripples. You back away trembling. Grimlet whines softly. Maybe once Willen lost a ferret here and never told you. Maybe everything finds a predator eventually. Lantern flame flickers low, oil nearly spent. You retreat the way you came, mind buzzing with the image of blind ferret king ruling underworld streams. Up top, dawn's first light stains windows pale gold. Castlecock crows. You're soaked waist down in filth, sack bulging, heart still jackhammering. But you're alive, and the lady will awaken to a gallery free of whiskers. She will never know you branded plague from her floors. She will sip spiced wine, thank the saints, and muse aloud how peace appears effortless. That's your reward, invisibility. You limp to the steward. He counts tails, recoils at the stink, pays coin with pinched fingers. "Where's Master Willen?" he asks. "Tending wounds," you answer. He snorts, rat-catchers always bleeding. "Tell him the lady's carpets are to be turned tomorrow. Any sign of droppings, heads will roll." "Your head," he implies. Back in the infirmary. Willen sleeps fitfully, fever sweat beading his brow. You place the halfpennies beside his pillow, unsure if he'll see dawn. You contemplate quitting, taking your wages, running beyond city walls. Then you remember the blind ferret in the drains. You remember ducks feeding at dawn. Every creature plays its part, or chaos feasts. You sit beside Willen, sharpening his knife on a whetstone until the edge sings, just in case he can't swing it tomorrow. Boot soles still damp from the moat, you trudge past the tilt yard toward the postern Willen showed you before dawn, the ferret sleeping beneath his jerkin like a furry flask of rage. Sunlight on your back means almost every other soul inside Baron Redwald's keep is stealing an hour's peace. Poulterers nodding on sacks of straw, squires snoring in tack rooms, scullions draping themselves across overturned washtubs. Rat-catchers get no such reprieve. The steward is waking by the bakery wall with a pile of tally sticks so new the bark still weeps sap. He slaps one across your palm hard enough to raise splinters, nods at the narrow slit in the masonry. "Under Lady Edlin's mattress," he whispers, scratching, gnawing, squealing. "Deal with it, or fetch your last halfpenny." The slit is scarcely wider than your shoulders and dark as a priest's doubts. Willen slides inside head first, shoulders rippling as he inches forward, boots hooked on stone until his frame vanishes into the gloom. You follow, candle stub clenched between teeth, one hand steadying the sack's mouth, the other feeling along flint-sharp mortar. Dust coughs down in chalky breaths. The darkness is so dense it seems to press your ribs inward. Somewhere ahead, Willen whistles a single note, low and flat. He's testing echoes, measuring the chamber's length the way sailors sound river depths with rope and lead. After 10 paces, the crawl space widens into a chimney-like cavity that runs behind the lady's solar hearth. Ash-gray stones foist heat enough to make you sweat, yet the gallery above her chamber still feels a draft. All the warmth is bleeding into this hollow wall where rats have carved the world's most exclusive warren. You and Willen perch on opposite ledges, balanced like gargoyles. Far below, some hidden drain gulps runoff in mocking applause. A rustle, a thump. 2 fat bodies tumble from an unseen breach and land on a timber crossbeam less than a thumb's breadth from your face. Albino, with eyes like claret in moonlight. They stare, unruffled, whiskers testing the air. They smell vinegar on your skin and hesitate. Willen flicks his curved blade. One rat skewers clean while the other bolts, claws skittering, tail whipping spittle from your lips. Grimlet launches, a gray spring at full coil, catching the runaway mid-air. Its squeal unzips the silence. 20 heartbeats later, no further movement. Willen slits the carcasses, pries out waxy blobs of yellow fat, and tucks them into a tin. Bait, he murmurs. Gentry like these dine on sweetmeats. They'll lure the whole family. You hate how clinical he sounds, as though he's counting pennies, not lives. A fresh passage opens behind the hearth, only visible when Willen pries out a mortar plug the size of a turnip. Beyond lies a horizontal shaft, just wide enough to crawl belly down. He gestures for you to take point. You swallow. Air from the shaft tastes like boiled parchment and cinnamon. The lady's winter sachets must leak scent through the cracks. You wriggle forward, dip shoulders, push. Cobwebs break across your cheeks. A spider scuttles over your brow. You think you taste plaster in your mouth, but realize it's fear clotting on your tongue. Halfway in, sound shrinks to your own breath. A squeak inches behind your ear, then another. Something alive scares across the arch of your foot. You reflex kick, heel colliding with unseen skull. The crunch vibrates up your shin. The shaft funnels into a cedar-lined cavity directly beneath the lady's feather mattress. Light filters down through a knothole above. Dust motes swirl like drunken angels. Here, a nest. Shredded lace handkerchiefs, orange peel, tufts of ermine trimming, treasures raided from noble rubbish. And pups, hairless and pink, dozens, squealing blindly around their dam. Willen passes you a clay cup holding rosemary ash. You sprinkle the gray dust in a circle, confining the writhing litter. The mother rat lunges, teeth snapping. With gloved fingers, you grip her tail, swing her hard against the cedar wall. Stun first, kill after. Willen likes quick deaths. No bite, no scream, no airborne plague. He drops every pup into a separate pouch. They'll fetch bonus coin from the apothecary who brews sore throat drafts from rat embryo oil. You reverse out, limbs trembling. Turning in the shaft is impossible, so you crawl backward, dragging the blood-slick mother by the tail. When you finally pop into the chimney cavity, you're shaking from muscle cramps. Willen nods approval, then bandages 2 fresh scrapes on your ankle. Rat claws opened you like parchment. He spits on the linen before tying it. Saliva's better than holy water, he claims, if you've chewed wormwood that morning. Candle stubs spent, you shift to a tiny rush torch that smokes more than it shines. The soot stains your eyes, turns tears black. Willen unfolds bone dice from a pouch, shakes them close to his ear, listens. He says he can predict nest density by how the dice rattle. Hollow chambers echo, solid masonry does not. You pretend to believe. He tosses them. They clatter once, twice, rest on 7 and 2. His grin flashes. Cellar tunnels next. The cellar runs beneath the entire keep, an underworld of barrels, pickling jars, and salt pork slabs. Its air is wet, heavy with brine and mold. Rats prosper here because cats hate the mildew. 2 pickguards sit asleep on overturned casks, pikes propped against their knees, ale fumes thick as fog. You and Willen slip past, feet silent on damp clay. He uncorks a jar of lard steeped with tansy leaves, smears it on central pillars. The stink makes you gag. Keeps rat fleas off our trousers, he explains. You imagine the invisible tide of insects recoiling from the herbal stench. Fleas hate tansy, he claims, so do mosquitoes, and some say demons of fever. You hope all 3 are true. Along the north wall he pauses, sets ear against stone. A faint scrabbling runs behind the masonry, rhythmic like a drunk drummer. He taps along until the sound changes pitch, then scores an X with his blade. Hollow. A slap of the pommel loosens a brick. The opening exhales fetid wind, the moat tunnel Willen muttered about yesterday. Small bones litter the sill, slick with moss. Frogs, perhaps, or smaller rats eaten by larger ones. He slides in head first. You follow, ignoring the steep descent. Water slushes ankle deep. The tunnel arcs toward the moat. Every step stirs ancient silt, releasing buried odors, pitch, algae, dead fish. Rat tracks crisscross the mud, so thick they blur. You note bigger prints amid the small ones, blunt toes, claw marks, deeper, spaced farther apart. Willen sees your gaze. Water King, he whispers. You choke down questions, save breath. Around a tight bend, the tunnel widens into a grotto where torchlight dances off black water. There, bobbing like driftwood, floats the carcass of the albino dam you killed earlier. Someone upstream must have tossed her. A ripple passes beneath her, then a shape surfaces. A rat twice normal bulk, chestnut fur slick, one ear torn jagged. Its eyes show white cataract film, yet it swims unerring, snouts the corpse, then turns toward you. Blind, but guided by scent and vibration. Willen hisses, step back. He reaches for a gaff hook from his belt, barbed like a fisher's but serrated. He times the rat's paddle strokes, jabs. The hook sinks into haunch. The Water King thrashes, slams its body against stone, water spraying. Willen's arm jerks but holds. With the other hand, he yanks a hemp cord, loops it around the beam overhead, hoists the rat screaming into the air where it dangles, claws raking nothing. He slits its throat quick. Blood pours, mixing with water, staining boots pink. As the body stills, smaller rats pour from side tunnels, drawn by scent. Eyes glow along the walls like scattered embers. You and Willen exchange looks, too many to fight. He unpockets a beeswax ball laced with quicklime, rolls it through the water. Lime meets blood, fizzing into caustic steam. The rats squeal, retreating.
You both drag the Water King's corpse back to the cellar. Willin weighs it in his hands. Skins sell dear, he notes. Drowned fur fetches less, but muscle like this means weeks feasting on dovecoat squabs. And dove feathers host mites. He orders you to lug the body to the tannery annex. Your arms cramp around the slippery weight, but you obey. Tannery Annex lies outside Curtain Wall, near Cesspit. The tanner's asleep on hides. You trade him carcass for a flask of alum solution and 3 deerskin thongs. Antiseptic Willin intends for his boot wound. When you return, he's removed his boot again, cleaning the charred bite with vinegar poultice. Face pale as parchment. Poisons still threaten. He ties one thong around his calf, mutter chants a rhyme about binding sickness inside leather. You note the fever sheen on his brow. Work continues. The steward orders the great hall cleared before supper. You sprinkle ochre dust to mark rat burrows under rushes. Grimlet patrols table legs, nose twitching. A weasel brave leaps from a platter of congealed gravy, charges straight for a gaggle of scullions. Panic erupts, screams, dishes shattering. You intercept, swing the tally stick, fracture its spine mid-pounce. Scullions cheer, then stuff rags under doors as if expecting cavalry of rats to storm through. Evening bleeds into night, candles replaced by torches. The Baron holds court, music rises above, viols and lutes. You and Willin lurk under the minstrel's gallery, identifying chew marks in instrument cases, rat incisors carving scroll motifs no craftsman intended. One lyre has strings coated with tallow to soften sound. Rats stripped 3 strings to floss their teeth. Replacement gut roams at 5 silver bits apiece. The minstrel begs you to guard his chest while he plays. You set Grimlet inside the chest, half open, let her eyes glimmer among velvet folds, a living lock. Hours later, music fades, nobles disperse. Castle snores cadence. That's when you feel shaking at your hip. Strange vibrations through stones. Willin presses palm to floorboards, counts silently, frowns. He drags you toward pantry corridor, stops at a barrel-framed hatch you've never noticed. Behind it descends a stair of unhewn granite, older than the current fortress. Ice cellar, he murmurs, forgotten by most, only rats remember. Cold greets you like a slap. Breath fogs. Walls glisten with hoarfrost. Ice blocks stacked 3 high line niches, preserved since winter with salt and sawdust. On top of one slab rests an entire cheese wheel half-eaten. Rat droppings pattern the rind like letters. They risk cold for such luxury. Willin traces droppings, nods toward a fissure in stone. From that fissure leaks warmer air and the scent of beeswax, an old storage cavity where ice and candles once shared space. You enter crouched. Candles long gone left puddles of fat now hardened. Rats found them, gnawed tunnels, built wax citadels. Walls shimmer under lamp. You're intruding in a mausoleum of candles. Tiny paw prints tattoo every surface. Rat carcasses, mummified by cold, dangle from stalactites of wax. And at the far end, a sight that stills your blood. A human skull, jaw gnawed away, eye sockets homes for cobwebs. Beside it, rusted mail links. Willin exhales. Old guard locked in here during siege, forgot. The rats remembered. You wish to flee, but you crouch and scoop droppings into a jar, evidence to show the steward of hidden infestations. Willin pockets the skull's tooth, says enamel grinds into poultice for ferret colic. Nothing wasted.
Climbing back, your knees buckle. Exhaustion swamps you. Willin staggers too, fever glazing eyes. He relinquishes ferret leash, whispering, "Your round now." You protest, but he shakes head. "Sun's near," he says. "When bells ring prime, steward does tally." You realize count is still notched only to 34, but tonight's haul is easily thrice that. The first tally stick broke. Numbers swirl meaningless in your skull. You'll need to guess, carve, hope. You drag sacks, 2 now, toward courtyard. Dawn smears peach across battlements. The steward strides out, velvet cap askew, yawning. Sees sacks, eyes widen. "By the rood, that many?" You nod. He counts tails swiftly, lips moving. 69, plus pups jarred for apothecary. He whistles. Pouches out your coin, a silver groat and 3 brass tokens. Enough for bread for a week, and maybe willow bark for Willin's fever.
He asks after your master. "Fever dreams," you say. Stuart grimaces. "Keep him breathing. The lady prefers his methods, efficient and silent. If he dies, you're promoted, but with half the pay until proven." Half pay for double burden? Typical.
You fetch hot ale. Pour feverfew tincture down Willin's throat. Watch him drift into uneasy slumber. His leg weeps yellow pus despite cautery. You clean, rebind. Grimlet curls beside him, protective. You should sleep, but a page arrives. Rats in the scriptorium, chewed parchment deeds. Monks crying, ink smeared, quills snapped. Before you can answer, chapel bell tolls prime. A new tally stick slapped into your palm, clean, accusatory. So down the spiral you go again, candle renewed, ferret alert. In narrow cloisters, each echo of your footfall whispers the same question. How many more nights until the rats win? How many until fever claims Willin? How many until you stop shaking at every squeak? You grip curved blade tight, vow to learn the cryptic dice, the ivy oil, the no-go runes, everything before someone else's skull decorates the wax crypt. The scriptorium door hangs ajar. Quills litter the threshold like albino porcupine quills. Somewhere inside, pages rustle, though no hands turn them. You step across, lungs swelling with dread and determination. Another hunt begins. Ink still glistens wet along your boot soles as you cross the threshold into the scriptorium, and the smell is wrong. Less of vellum, lamp oil, and dusty devotion, more of burst grain sack and ammonia. A rat has relieved itself with the confidence of a steward signing ledgers. The tang stings your nostrils as if the creature itself is mocking the rule of Saint Benedict scratched into every archway. A single taper sputters near the far desk, its light fluttering like a moth with a singed wing, revealing owl-eyed monks hunched over half-eaten parchments, quills frozen mid-letter. They don't notice you at first. Their world has narrowed to an ink blot creeping across a priceless charter, to the faint rustle of something gnawing the wooden lectern from the inside out. Brother Aldrich spots you, lips pale, fingers trembling around a sand shaker. "They've taken the cartulary," he wheezes, as though the parchment itself contains his final confession. You have no idea what a cartulary is, but you recognize despair, and you recognize the jittery patter of claws inside the hollow desk. They're nesting where scribes stash spare quills. One monk whispers that the rats ate half of St. Edwin's hagiography overnight and left droppings shaped like punctuation marks in the margins, as if composing their own vermin gospel. Another shakes a burnt-out rushlight at you like a talisman. "Fetch your beast," he pleads. "Redeem the word." Grimlet darts from your sleeve before you can command her. She scampers across scattered parchment, past an overturned inkhorn, and slithers into the desk's warped slot. A squeal erupts, then a thump, and you brace for the classic death shake. Instead, there's a frantic torrent of claw beats, Grimlet battered backward out the aperture, fur slicked with black ink, eyes wide. She's panting like she's faced something not rat, not ferret, but a nightmare soldered together from both. You wipe ink from her whiskers, whisper nonsense comfort. She keeps staring at that slot, muscles twitching. You fish a rush torch from your satchel, strike flint. The monks flinch at sparks as if a heresy has hatched in midair. With the torch fed, you kneel, angle the flame toward the aperture. Inside the cavity, light reveals shredded parchment, chewed goose feathers, beads of black ink glimmering like oil on water, and at the back a shadow, low, wide, breathing slow. 2 eyes reflect the flame, not red like albinos, but gold, almost human. The head emerges, and you swallow a curse. It is a rat, yes, but monstrous. Fur mottled with fleeing patches of skin, ears notched, snout scarred, and flanked by 6 smaller rats clinging to its back like barnacles. They dismount when the light stings them. The big one gnashes teeth the size of barley kernels, then hisses so hard parchment flutters.
You have no hook, no net, only a short blade and a ferret still rattled. Time to improvise. You thrust the torch forward. The giant rat doesn't retreat. It lunges, biting flame, singes whiskers, recoils but not far, mouth still open as if daring you to cleanse it with fire.
Behind you, Brother Aldrich recites a psalm half under breath. The chant is ragged but rhythmic, and you remember Willen's mutterings. Rats hate sudden sound patterns, unpredictable pulses. Monks chant steady. You need chaos. You bark at Aldrich. Skip lines, change rhythms, confuse it. He blinks but obeys, jumbling verses, so the cadence lurches like a drunken soldier. The rats bristle, the golden-eyed brute flinches, disoriented by noise that thrashes instead of soothes. You lunge, drive torch deeper, smoke curls off fur. The brute squeezes sideways, shoving minions as it flees along some hidden seam in the desk. A board creaks. You thrust blade, feel contact, a wet scrape of metal on vertebra, then empty air. The rat is gone, leaking darkness. It leaves you a consolation prize. An entire sheaf of parchment drags from its claw, impaled on your dagger's point. You pull it free. The monks gasp. It's the missing portion of the cartulary. Royal charters, oaths, tax rolls. Ink smears, but words survive. Aldrich's eyes shine with tears thicker than any library paste. He clasps the sheaf like a relic. You shrug, but inside your chest something sparks. Strange pride that saving scraps of skin glued to words could matter more than coins. Torch nearly out, you retreat into corridor. Grimlet paces circles, casting worried glances at desk. She wants vengeance. But daylight slices narrow arrows through arrow loops now, meaning your shift bleeds into midday. Willen still sweats delirious upstairs. You must brew medicine or dig grave. Decisions loom like crows. First, report. The steward meets you outside buttery, nose wrinkled at ink-splattered ferret. You list counts, emphasize golden-eyed brute. He taps chin. That boy is the librarium devil. Heard tales when I served Bishop's Keep in Belwick. Eats wax, ink, even tallow paint. Hard to kill.
He flips a brass jet on. Bonus if you mount its pelt on my wall. That coin clinks heavier than earlier wages. You nod, pocket motivation. You climb timber stairs to servant's garret where Willin lies. Fever flushed his cheeks the hue of rotten apples. He mutters about knotted tail thrice over, limestone belly, other rat-catcher riddles. You unstopper the tanner's alum, its sharp tang like hot pennies. Mix with willow bark and mashed mint from cook's herb cask. Force the brew between his teeth. He gags, swears, then drifts into softer breath. You clean the wound anew, pack with honey, cook lentidab, rebind. Grimlet nestles by his neck, licking sweat. Down in courtyard, commotion erupts. A scullery lad wails, holding stump of finger. Rat bit clean through in bakehouse. Bakers refuse ovens until pests cleared. Bread for supper imperiled. Panic flutters kitchen like overturned tray. Steward drags you, says solve it or face lash. Bakehouse stands apart, warmth bleeding through its bricks. Yeast scent masks rat musk. But you spot trails. Fine dusting of flour reveals every paw, swoop of tail, even splay of claws mid-leap. Tracks converge behind flour bins into a gap under the brick oven base. The oven roars with coals, heat intense enough to blister. Rats retreat there because no human dares. But you must. You study bricks. One is loose, maybe clean-out port. With iron peel you pry. Heat bursts out, smacks face, but not unbearable if brief. Inside cavity glows orange. Embers pushed aside leave hollow. You thrust torch. Rats scatter deeper beyond fire brick where a cool cavity connects to old ash chute. Clever, they skirt heat. You fetch water bucket. Dampen cloak. Drape over shoulders. Mouthcloth too. Ferret stays behind. Too risky. You crawl halfway into oven cavity, skin feeling like bacon rind. But you make visual. Ash chute slopes downward into dark where rats huddle on mound of spilled grain. The golden-eyed brute isn't among them, just regular cluster. You withdraw, skin scorching. Idea forms. You request 2 wineskins from pantry, fill with water. Suspend them above oven mouth using spit forks. Then you shovel coals into chute entrance, not to burn rats, but to heat the surrounding brick. After some minutes, you slash wineskins. Water cascades onto glowing coals. Steam billows into chute, rushing deep, a scalding fog. High squeals echo. Within seconds, rats pour out same way they entered, desperate for cooler air, right into waiting flour-dusted floor where you and 3 kitchen boys armed with paddles stand ready. Thwack, thwack, heartbeat chorus. 9 kill strokes later, floor quiet, steam dissipates. Bakers cheer while stamping rat corpses into burlap to toss in pit. Fingerless lad grins manic revenge despite bandage. Back to steward. More tales, more tallies. He grants half holiday, says sleep while sun's up, hunt again at moon. But your marrow still buzzes. Fatigue spiderwebs behind eyes, yet mind refuses rest. Instead, you visit Castle Armorer, whose floor hosts iron filings dreaded by rat teeth. You barter 2 fresh carcasses for access to scrap pile. You're seeking parts, thin chain links, split rings, slender wire. Plan forging inside skull, a trap worthy of librarium devil. Armorer grunts, gives you rusted spring from crossbow trigger and a fragment of ratline chain. You thank him. Hurry to garret workshop, Willin once fashioned snares. There you shape wire into slip noose, attached to spring, tensioned by bent lathe. Trigger plate will be inkstone. Slightest displacement yanks noose tight around intruder's neck.
Entire device disguised beneath folio pages at desk. Devil loves inkstones. Tonight you'll set snare. Bait with cheese rubbed in goose quill fat. Evening paints battlements violet. Willen wakes clearer, asks for report. You recount brew of disasters. He chuckles painful. Good huntsman grows in panic soil, he states. Then he teaches final charm. Ratbane powder recipe. Gypsum dust, dried rue, pinch of crushed pearl if you can steal from ladies' jewelry scrapings. Pearl blinds rats temporarily. They groom half the night, then wander into traps. You memorize. Night falls, chapel bell for Compline drones. Monks drift to beds. You slip into scriptorium again, torch hooded. Desk repaired crudely hides gash, but not smell of blood. You set snare beneath inkstone, sprinkle pearl-less ratbane anyway. Grimlet stationed atop high shelf, vantage. Now wait. Silence stitched with ticking tallow. You fight sleep, eyelids gravel heavy. Somewhere deep in stone, rumbles, an orator rat gnawing beams. Minutes or hours pass? Torch dies, moonlight spills slab shapes on floor. Movement. Page flutters, though no breeze. A silhouette slides along baseboards. Bigger than normal, but smaller than Water King. Eyes gold catch lunar gleam. It sniffs, rises on haunches, tests air. Approaches desk. You hold breath until lungs sting. Rat leaps onto chair rung, climbs to desktop. Snout bumps inkstone, scent of quill grease irresistible. It shifts weight. Inkstone tilts, plate depresses, spring whips. Chain noose snaps up, encircles neck. Rat thrashes, desk rattles, parchment storms. You rush, grapple tail, secure chain to post. Devil fights, biting chain, screeches like shattered violin. Grimlet leaps down, sinks teeth into hind leg. Wrestling duet ends with knife thrust behind skull. Body slumps, chain slack. Torch relit reveals wounds. Jaws serrated, muscle dense, weight nearly that of Grimlet. You stroke ferret's head, she purrs warbly. You harvest pelt per steward's request. But victory births proof of deeper warren. Devil carried lice bigger than mites. Species that thrives only in crypt depths. Where crypt? Monks speak of sealed ossuary beneath chapel predating keep, where bones of plague year were bricked away with quicklime. If rats opened breach there, disease could dance through halls like minstrel. Dawn soon, yet you push. You fetch priory keys from half-asleep sacristan, tell of parchment rescue. He blesses you, grants keyring heavy as guilt. Chapel silent, except for candle crack. Trap door in vestry, iron bound, rust groans. Stair descends into earth. Smell, stale air, stone rot, faint whiff of lime. You descend with single lantern. Bones stacked waist-high form aisles, skulls mortared in walls. Beautiful and terrible. Rat tunnels thread through bone piles, smooth as glass from traffic. You squat, note droppings fresh, gnawed femur ends. You crawl after. Passage tight, but opens into cavern carved by ancient quarrying. Floor littered with coins, the dead's grave tokens, glint among gnawed rags once burial shrouds. Rats built citadel here, ramparts of bones, central mound of cloth nests. Hundreds sleep, breathe in mass pulsing wave. You freeze. To kill this brood requires fire and collapse, or plague will march. But alone and low on oil, your choice is slim. You back away, sprinkle ratbane to delay pursuit, climb stairs, reseal trapdoor double-locked, then sprint to garret for Willen. He sits upright, fever broken. You tell him of Bone City. His eyes sharpen like whetted steel. If that nest grows, castle falls. He calls for steward, even baron. Dawn court convenes in rush. You present evidence: devil carcass, lice in jar, scribal damage, infected finger boy, bone nest report. Baron's face drains color. Lady Edlin clutches kerchief. Physician mutters about black death tales. Plan forms: flood ossuary with smoke of sulfur and juniper. Seal tunnels with molten pitch. Bring in moat water to drown survivors. You and Willen lead, since you know path. Reward promised, full wage doubled, and a loft room not hay pallet, if success. Sun climbs. Preparations commence. Coopers bring pitch barrels. Herbalists crush juniper. You rest barely an hour, hugging ferret. Battle for bones awaits, and you sense history pivot on squeaks in dark. But for now, you exhale, count wounds, sharpen blade. Pitch fumes sting your nostrils before sunrise even colors the crenellations. Coopering yard has been transformed overnight into an alchemist's nightmare. Copper cauldrons bubble with molten resin, sulfur powder lies in drifts like yellow snow, and bundles of dried juniper crackle as they burn down to charcoal skeins. The baron's huntsmen shovel embers, blacksmiths stir vats with iron shanks, and kitchen boys run relay with buckets slopping over boots. This is no siege engine assembly. It is preparation for a pestilential baptism, and you are the unwilling high priest. Willen emerges from the infirmary, still pale but upright, his forearm bound tight where infection once climbed. He carries Grimlet draped about his shoulders like a living stole. Her tail twitches at unfamiliar smells. Sulfur reminds her of tanner's pits, pitch of torches. She chirrups unease, but there's fire behind her eyes. She remembers bone tunnels. The steward presses a rolled parchment into your hand, a hastily sketched map of the chapel's substructure drawn from a mason's memory. Shaft to ossuary, side alcove once bricked, unused well shaft, features marked with trembling lines. Flood roots, he explains, so smoke has place to breathe and water a place to settle. You nod, though the lines are more guess than gospel. Baron Osmond rides out from donjon archway, armor half-fastened, as though he slept in it for the first time since youth. He dismounts, approaches you, eyes red not from wine but sleepless dread. I buried my firstborn son in that crypt, he murmurs. See, he rests undisturbed. You promise nothing. Rats have already chewed burial shrouds. But you simply bow and reply, I'll do what's possible. The plan unfolds in 3 waves. First, smoke. Juniper and sulfur combined with damp straw to raise a choking cloud thick enough to drive anything with lungs toward escape routes. Second, pitch. Molten resin poured after smoke to cling to fur and immobilize. Third, deluge. Moat water redirected by firefighters' leather hoses to quench flaming pitch before it ignites beams and drown whatever claws still twitch. The monks blanch at talk of sacrilege. Priests sprinkle holy water on barrels to sanctify what is, in effect, a hellish inundation. At your suggestion, they add crushed mint to the juniper bundles. Rats despise the odor, and perhaps the saints will approve the hygiene.
You and Willen descend first, armored in improvised gear, boiled leather jerkins, linen wraps soaked in vinegar over nose and mouth, rawhide gloves dipped in alum to bitter any bite. You carry a brass censer the size of a kettle, rope-slung, full of the sulfur-juniper blend already smoldering. Willen shoulders a small cask of pitch, the bung stoppered by a wooden peg. 2 grooms follow with torches. 3 more men wait at hatch edge with water skins in case flame escapes upward. Trapdoor groans. Hinges squeal like pigs at slaughter. You lower ladder, feel cool, crypt air coil up, already thick with rat stench and faint lime dust. As you descend, lantern trembling, you think absurdly of childhood cellar dares, how darkness then felt playful. Here, darkness feels hungry. Your boots hit stone floor slick with condensation. The narrow stair throat amplifies each breath into thunder. First chamber, rows of skulls mortared into walls, eye sockets like dim watchlights. Rats scatter at lantern sweep. You pass niches where wax effigies once stood. Only melted stumps remain, candles long devoured by vermin. You set censer on a flagstone, give chain a jerk. Sparks burst, smoke billows. Immediately coughs erupt behind mask. Vinegar stings eyes but keeps lungs open. You and Willen retreat deeper, funneling smoke toward main ossuary via draft created by open hatch above. The bone hole awaits. A vaulted chamber bigger than you dared dream, built by masons who never imagined their artistry would host a vermin empire. Piles of femurs stacked like cordwood, scapulas tessellated into macabre parquet. In center rises the bone mound nest, cloth scraps, straw, bits of copper candlesticks, fragments of stained glass glimmering like jewels. And blanketing it, thousands of rats, awake, restless, squeaking confusion at pungent smoke curling in. You exchange glance with Willen. Time for second wave. He uncorks pitch cask. Tarry aroma cuts through sulfur. But before he can tip, movement atop mound stops him. Something emerges, a silhouette larger even than golden-eyed devil, thicker round, tail like twisted rope. It stands on hind legs, paws raised as if in benediction, and releases a low, almost canine growl. Eyes not merely gold, but iridescent, reflecting lanterns so bright they seem lit from within. "Queen," Willen whispers, voice cracking. He's told campfire tales. Every colony has a matriarch bigger than the rest, who births litters unending. You half believed. Now she's real, perched on throne of bones. Queen rat opens jaws, teeth length of quills glint. She squeals, a note that vibrates ribs. The surrounding horde responds, not by flight, but by massing together, forming living carpet that ripples toward you. Smoke be damned. "Pitch, now!" you bark. Willen swings cask, splashing sticky molten resin across front ranks. Rats scream as fur mats, limbs seize, yet momentum behind drives them on. Some flop, others clamber over glued brethren, their paws blackened. You kick few aside, brandish torch, ignite patches of pitch. Blue flame licks tunnel floor, producing acrid blackout that merges with sulfur haze. Hissing choir rises. You retreat to stair junction, but Queen detours around flames, bounding along bone shelf with hideous agility. She aims not for you, but for ladder, escape path. If she breaches chapel, panicked rats will follow, castle lost. Grimlet leaps from Willen's collar, intercepts on shelf. Tiny ferret meets colossal rat mid-beam. She clamps onto Queen's ear. Rat bucks. Both tumble into mound. Swarm convulses as subjects scramble to aid monarch. You lose sight of Grimlet. Pulse surges. Third wave must come early. You shout upward code word flood. Men above unlatch sluice boards that redirect moat water through an old drainage culvert you discovered overnight. Distant roar builds like river awakening. Seconds later, a sheet of cold, muddy water pours down side tunnel, sweeping smoke and charred bodies alike. You and Willen press against wall niches, gripping skulls for purchase. Waves surges into Bone Hall, dousing flames, rolling pitch-coated rats into churning slurry. Water hisses where it meets embers, steam fogs vision. Queen Rat tries to climb mound, water slapping at flanks. She scrambles onto floating ribcage raft, leaps for wall niche half-flooded. You wade chest deep, fighting undertow of bones. Ray's short spear, armorer lent it. Timing heartbeats, when Queen claws at ledge, you thrust. Tip pierces side, shriek erupts so shrill slate rattles overhead. She twists, bites spear shaft, almost tears it free. But Marek, one groom braver than sense, lunges from stair, drives pitch-soaked torch into wound. Fire flares a moment before water quenches, but heat enough to char within. Queen spasms, slides into flood, limbs twitching, then still. Current drags corpse away, tail disappearing beneath froth. Minutes stretch. Water recedes through lower drains to ravine beyond fortress, designed centuries ago to prevent crypt flooding. Steam lifts, revealing devastation. Soggy bone avalanche, hundreds of rat carcasses tangled in cloth and straw, river of ink-black muck. Smell indescribable, burnt fur, sulfur, rot. You find Grimlet perched on protruding tibia, drenched but unbloodied, licking paw with dignified boredom. Relief slams knees weak. You scoop her, tuck inside jerkin where she shivers. Back in daylight courtyard, survivors emerge like miners from underworld. Castlefolk wring basin for decontamination. Buckets of vinegar water sluiced over leathers. The steward tallies casualties. One groom drowned when footing failed. Another bitten but stable. Fewer losses than feared. Chapel bells ring not for mass, but gratitude. Baron Osmond meets you again, jaw clenched, eyes tracking sludge still draining from culvert into moat. "My son's bones?" he asks. You explain, bones scattered, reinterment possible once sorted. He nods heavy, grants you token, silver brooch shaped like crossed keys, house symbol, confers authority to draw supplies without question, priceless for a catch rat. Yet victory births aftermath. Infirmary fills with coffers, smoke inhalation, exposure. Monks complain that sulfur defiled holy space. They demand exorcism. And inside keep, vacuum left by rats invites other opportunists. Cockroaches surge from pantry. Displaced mice invade ladies' solar. Extermination never ends. Night falls again, but you can't rest. Body aches, but mind buzzes. Willen sits by fire, polishing rescued skull to give proper burial. Says killing Queen means colony fragments. Stragglers will surface unpredictable. He proposes training rookies, forming permanent guild. You climb curtain wall for quiet. Watch moon glimmer on moat, now littered with floating corpses. Silence broken by distant owl and nearer squeak. You follow sound to parapet corner, where a lone rat, small, shivers, fur singed. It stares as if pleading. You raise boot, pause. Memory of queen's eyes. Cycle of hunger, survival. You lower foot. Instead, flick rat off wall into dark and whisper, warn the rest.
Boots steps behind. Lady Edlin approaches in hooded cloak, offers flask of mulled wine. You spared that one, she notes. You shrug. She says many callers will seek your services after rumor travels. Rat killer who fought Bone Queen. She warns alliances shift. Steward pockets may resent your reward. Politics breed sharper teeth than rats. She slips small parchment into your palm. Invitation to her solar for council at dawn, sealed with wax crescent. Back in garret, Grimlet asleep on Willen's chest, his breathing steady. You unroll parchment. Lady proposes venture, export of ratbane powder, monopoly backed by her dowry funds. She wants formulas, names of apothecaries. You know this path leads to gold, but maybe poison.
Lantern sputters. You weigh choices. Become entrepreneur. Remain castle guardian. Or drift on road where wraths are simpler than lords. Before sleep claims, you sharpen quills. Jot notes about breeding ferrets. About training urchins with sling. About future. You dream of tunnels without end, of ink flowing like water, of parchment rats composing their own chronicles. Dawn smudges the eastern clouds violet when the castle rooster finally crows, but you have been awake for hours listening to the aftermath of your own victory. Drip, drip of crypt water into courtyard drains. Distant clatter as scullions scrub pews with lye, and the occasional hollow boom whenever a laborer tosses another sack of rat corpses onto the pyre outside the postern gate. Sulphur still rides every draught, but it mingles now with rosemary smoke from cookhouse chimneys, a gentler scent that almost washes away last night's scorched hair reek. Almost.
Willen sleeps on, mouth open, one arm flung over Grimlet like a makeshift perch. The ferret's eyes dart beneath her lids, chasing phantom queens. You tuck the blanket higher and slip down the ladder from the garret into the weapons gallery, where Fletchers sharpen arrowheads beside drying sheaves of lavender, meant to conceal the odor of glue. Even soldiers prefer flowers to fumes after a night like that. When they spot the brooch at your collar, they nod with admiration that borders on fear. You nod back, feeling the weight of borrowed authority clink against your ribs. Lady Edlin's summons burns in your thoughts like pitch on a torch. You promise to meet her at dawn, so you cross the bailey, boots crunching cinders from the funeral pyre. 2 guards flank the solar entrance, but they merely step aside. Inside, shutters are cracked just wide enough to admit rose-colored light onto a table piled with scrolls and ledgers. Edlin herself bends over the clutter, quill hovering above parchment as though she might strike it dead with a single punctuation mark. She does not look up when you enter. Sit, quickly, we have scant time before council. You take a stool across from her and wait. Finally, she lays her quill aside and studies you over steepled fingers. The steward's tongue is already wagging that you cost the Baron 2 stalls of juniper stalks and half the moat's purity. He wants recompense. Meanwhile, the chaplain is convinced last night's sulphur blasphemed the sacristy and must be cleansed with a procession and coin. Her mouth twists in wry amusement. In short, everyone wants payment. You flex fingers still stiff from gripping spear shaft. And you think my ratbane powder can purchase peace? It can purchase leverage, she answers. Folk are scared. They will buy anything that promises control. The Dunwald monastery to the south lost half its grain to gnawers last harvest.
The abbess would trade silver candlesticks for your methods. Merchants on river barges complain rodents chew their ropes and ruin cargo. Even rival lords might set aside pride for a vial of that bitter dust. She reaches beneath the ledger stack and produces a small wooden box. Inside, a neat row of parchment labels: camphor, hellebore, ground peppermint, powdered glass, as fine as flour. I assembled samples at dawn. You add secrets. I provide coffers. Half the profits fund continued cleanup here. The rest we split. Think of it. No more scrounging for vinegar rags. No more sleeping in arrow slits. You trace a finger along the glass vials, remembering how many flavors of poison you tasted in alleys to learn which killed quick and which repelled. With coin, you could purchase real ferrets, hire apprentices, write manuals so no child must crawl among corpses with only a club. But alliances cost as well. What about the steward, you ask? He will resent any purse that bypasses his coffers. I will handle him, she says. He covets a bishopric for his son. Promises weigh more than coin. She pours a splash of wine and slides goblet toward you, sealing pact without words. You consider declining. Wine before breakfast sets wonky precedent, but grimace and drink. It tastes like cherries and scheming. Edlin unfurls a vellum sheet bearing her family crest, drafts a charter of company, the Crescent Pest Abatement Consortium. She signs with flourish, a star for the dot over her name. Then she offers quill. Ink pools at nib, waiting. You have signed nothing in your life except pay ledgers and confession slips. Your name looks feeble beside her puissant script, but you sign just the same. The pact is made. Before you can speak, a bell clangs from the great hall. Council is assembling. Edlin rolls up the charter, tucks it into leather tube. Let them argue fines. I have business to pacify them. She slips past you smelling of lavender, salt, and ambition. The council stirs like a hornet hive. The steward, thin lips white with fury, cites damages. Charred tapestries in chapel nave, cracked stained glass panel from heat. The garrison captain counters that without your purge, plague might have spread. Cost of coffins far outweighs broken glass. The chaplain intones Latin about purifying fire and sin. The baron rubs temples, hung over from brief and smoke. Through open doors you observe rather than join. Edlin giving subtle nods, pegging you as a specialist who needn't waste breath amid nobles. She eventually sways the baron. A modest fine paid from newly discovered accounts, likely her own dowry, will satisfy repairs. And the rat-catcher receives coin equal to a knight's half-year stipend as hazard wage. Steward chokes on words, but bows. Outside hall, you count coins in purse, heavy as a newborn. Such weight attracts eyes. You hide it within jerkin. Tuition for future hunters begins tonight. After midday meal, you and Willin walk the village lanes seeking recruits. Smokehouse wives cheer your passing, flowers tossed across path, rat slayer heroes. Children trail you, brandishing sticks like spears. You stop at one alley and approach twins, maybe 12 winters old, ragged but bright-eyed, juggling pebbles. You ask their names. Rick and Lean, they chirp. You offer half a loaf to each, test reflex. They snatch mid-air without dropping stones. Good. You hire them at 2 coppers a day, plus meals, to learn ferret handling and trap setting. By dusk, a group of 6 stands before you in smithy yard. Rick, Len, a barrel-chested stable hand named Gowan, a soft-spoken laundress, Mira, and 2 scrawny mill boys, Oric and Thatch. Willin lays out wooden practice traps and dead rat corpses bucketed from flood, stench unbearable but instructive. Grimlet demonstrates how to approach carcass, flip with rod, test for feigned death. She performs with relish, earning boiled egg reward.
Lessons run long into lantern hour. You teach slipknot snares, improvised flint powder scare charges, and how to read droppings for colony size. Mira proves quick with knots, twins perfect at mapping tunnels. Goen's strength pries loose floorboards. When night chill creeps, you dismiss them, but assign watch schedule. Every hour tonight, someone surveys granary corridors for survivor rats drawn by flood-displaced kin. They nod solemnly, training already forging purpose.
That same night, a messenger arrives from Dunwold Monastery, cloaked and mud-splattered, carrying scroll stamped with red wax cross. He seeks audience with Master of Vermin Wardens. You laugh at title, but meet him in guardhouse. The abbess entreats immediate aid. Gnaws swarming infirmary, spoiling herbs needed for pox season. She will pay 5 silver marks, plus 3 crates of honeyed mead if you travel within week. Edlin's venture moves faster than rat's breed. But leaving now risks castle relapse. You propose sending Willin and 2 apprentices instead. Test your guild. They accept, eager. You issue them satchels of powdered hellebore camphor mix, brass noisemaker bells, a ferret each, Grimlet's half-grown kits borrowed from Tanner. You mark route on cloth, avoid marsh bog where bandits prowl. In parting, you clasp Willin's forearm, pride mingling with dread. He has battled Queen, he can handle a monastery. Weekend brings sudden heat wave, floodwater stagnates, breeding insects. Without Queen's discipline, rat remnants scatter unpredictable. Some roam daylight, bold, nibbling grain spilled near bakehouse. Twins report bites on 2 hens. You act swift. Night patrols with mink oil torches scatter peppermint leaves. Goen invents spring jaw trap using hinge scrap. You refine by adding tin whistle hole so each snap sounds alarm. Production begins. At weekly market, Edlin erects stall draped in green cloth embroidered with crescent. She sells packets of castle-born rat ward for thrice the cost of ingredients. Farmers flock, recount plague stories from neighboring counties. She employs Mira as demonstrator, releasing tame mouse onto table, then wafting powdered mint. Mouse flees, crowd cheers. By noon, they're sold out. Your purse grows. Success, however, breeds whisper. Steward corners you near stable's dusk after fair. Your powders contain crushed glass, he hisses. Serf's mishandled bag, sliced hand badly. If Baron hears, his face gleams with threat. You reply evenly. Glass is ground finer than salt. Danger lies in careless transport. We will seal future pouches wax-lined. He snarls but leaves. That night, storm arrives with drumming rain that drowns courtyard fires but revives moat, flushing rot downstream. Lightning outlines castle silhouette bright as noon. You take shelter in chapel, still damp from sanctification. Here alone, you lay out rat skulls recovered earlier, sorting by size to study morphological variations. Perhaps age ratio reveals colony cycles. Lantern light sockets like candles once missing. You murmur apology to bones of Baron's son inadvertently lost. Vow to restore ossuary. Thunder cracks, door creaks, chaplain enters, robe clutched, eyes accusing. You profane holy ground with rodent relics, he sputters. You stand, bow slightly. He demands you remove pagan specimens. You counter that understanding pest anatomy aids future defenses.
He retorts, churches are for souls, not science. The argument echoes, lightning punctuation. Eventually, you gather skulls, but before leaving, you place small silver coin at altar, half tithe of your reward, a peace offering. Chaplain trembles, then nods grudgingly. He too can be bought. Morning after storm, sentinel trumpets sound. Courier returns from Dunwold. Willen? But rider slumps, face gray. You sprint to gate as guards help dismount. It isn't Willen, monastery novice. He gasps dire news. Upon arrival, your team found not simple infestation, but sickness, black-tongue plague among novices, carried by flea-ridden rats. Willen ordered quarantine, burned barns, but monks rebelled, fearing desecration. Conflict broke, Gawain wounded. They plead master to come.
Plague, word dreaded beyond dragons. Castle ears attuned, panic could undermine everything. You convene quick council with Edlin and Baron. Steward wants to close gates, bar all outsiders. Chaplain whispers plague sign from God. Edlin sees opportunity. Supply quarantine medicines, earn gratitude. You decide. Travel yourself with Rick and Len, light, quick, bringing remedies. Leave Mira to manage castle pests. Baron grants swift horses, linen masks soaked in juniper oil, and letter of protection. He fears spread to realm, success crucial. At dawn, you ride south along River Road. Fields once lush, now blackened by storm. You glimpse carcasses of sheep washed to reed banks, already pecked by crows. Twins ride ponies ahead, mapping puddles that hide ruts. Half-day in, you encounter refugee family camped by Willow, mother feverish, buboes under arms. You give them peppermint vinegar compress. Instruct father to burn bedding, travel to herbalist in Hilltown. He weeps gratitude, presses wooden carving of rat pierced by thorn into your hand, odd folk charm. Near sunset, you smell Dunwold's fires before sighting Spire, acrid smoke of straw and pitch mixed with incense. Monastery once serene, now surrounded by tents of sick overflow. 2 nuns guard gate with quarterstaves. They wave at sight of your brooch. Inside cloister, you find Willen stoking coal brazier to heat vinegar pots. His eyes haunted, his arm bandaged dark with fresh stain. He embraces you quickly, then updates. Plague fleas still biting despite fires. Rats burrow under walls. He lost 1 kit ferret. Gawain lies fevered but alive. Monks divided between prayer and panic. You assume command. First, segregate healthy. Second, flood burrows with mint oil water. Third, capture fleas using candle over bowl trick you learned in Dockside Tavern. Fools fleas into leaping to heat, then drowning in soapy water. Twins set dozens overnight. You mix new powder. Equal parts camphor, ground pennyroyal, dried rue. Dust every robe hem. Days blur into regimen of fumigation, burial, and stern lectures on hygiene. Some monks resist, quoting scripture. You counter with parables of stewardship. Meanwhile, Willen devises cage trap using bread soaked in mead. Rats can't resist. Get tipsy, easier to dispatch. One evening, Abbot confides library holds scrolls from ancient physicians, Greek, Arabic translations, describing fleas as disease carriers centuries prior. He had dismissed until now. You request copies. Knowledge must spread faster than plague. After week, new cases halt. Fevered recover slowly. Gawain sits up, cracks joke about smelling worse than pitch vat. Abbot declares miracle, credits prayer, but nods to you when monks cheer. Payment arrives. Silver marks plus mead, but also something rarer. Manuscript pages of Pliny's Historia Naturalis, annotated with local marginalia on herbs. You tuck into satchel.
Return journey joyous. Rick and Lean race ponies, free of lice. At castle, Edlin greets caravan with triumphant grin. Steward stands grudging, but offers clean water bowl for Grimlet, now expecting second litter.
Yet not all celebrate. Carters from northern fief hold a rat corpse found floating in moat. White patch on head shaped like cross, omen of witchcraft. They blame your powders for unnatural mutations. Rumor seeds fear. Baron convenes midnight audience. Rival lord accuses castle of unleashing pestilent powders on countryside. Demands hearing before duke. Politics sharpen. You lie awake, plan defense, gather testimonies of none, abbot, villagers aided. But courts heed power over truth. Edlin suggests demonstration at Duke's court. Release rats, show ferrets efficiency. Risky. Storm clouds of intrigue gather, darker than plague tunnels. The court summons arrives on parchment thick as salted hide, its red seal mottled by the courier's sweat. Attend His Grace, Duke Gerard of Highlake, within 8 days, to answer charges of malicious sorcery, unlawful contagion, and endangerment of noble holdings. No plea, no margin for negotiation. A jagged signature from Lord Monfrey of Thornbridge, your baron's territorial rival, leers beneath the florid script. The steward reads it aloud in the keep's gallery, while wind rattles stained glass shards still waiting on replacement. The assembled household shifts in uneasy waves. Knights fingering sword belts, cooks clutching aprons dotted with flour, your apprentices paling as though a plague rat had crept among them. Baron's shoulders sag. He mutters that Gerard is cousin to the king's chancellor, political weather as unsteady as summer thunder. If Thornbridge convinces the duke that your powders tamper with nature, fines will be the lightest outcome. Stake burnings still flicker in provincial memory. Edlin reacts first, voice like a drawn blade. We go and we dazzle, she says, a spectacle that snaps fear in two. We repeat the monastery miracle before every witness who matters. She maps it all out in minutes, sketched with charcoal on ale-spotted table. Wagon brimming with live rats caught in monastery grain shed, already caged, half-starved to ensure boldness. Ferrets on leashes, Grimlet's older kits, plus a new litter from the tanner's cousin. Powder pouches, sealed in scarlet silk, stamped with crescent sigil to look official, medicinal, harmless. Twins Rick and Len will demonstrate tunnel mapping with ropes and lime. Mira will recite dosage instructions like a chanting priestess. Gowan, arm healed to sturdy ache, will hoist traps over his head to prove mechanical reliability. You, centerpiece, will hold the Duke's eye and break the back of suspicion. The Baron signs off because no alternative exists, though his quill scratches reluctant, as though each letter gouges thin ice. Stewart offers snide blessings, but secretly readies ledgers to redirect caravan tariffs should you hang. Even Chaplain consents, provided you carry a reliquary shard of St. Oswin and promise no further corpse pyres. You accept because faith is coin when coin isn't enough. Preparations devour the week. Rick and Lane scour cellars, rustling rodents like autumn leaves into reinforced oak crates. Gowan pounds iron into wide maw hinges, fits springs until they snap with precise ferocity. Mira and Willen mix fresh sachets, substituting ground eggshell for powdered glass.
safer but still lethal in a rat gut. Edlin stitches a banner, silver ferret on green field biting a crowned rat. She insists symbolism matters. Nobles love a story they can grasp in one heraldic glance.
The road to High Lake unspools across heath and bracken, 7 carts in procession, guards front and rear. At night you camp in hollows to blunt the wind. Apprentices gather round your fire while you flesh old tales. How French rat-catchers used acid fumes in catacombs. How Eastern traders trained mongoose lines to clear spice warehouses. The youths listen wide-eyed. Knowledge is wool against the chill. Yet sleep is shallow. Every creak of cage bars reminds that you carry evidence which could condemn or redeem. Second dawn, a farmer gallops from opposite direction, waving kerchief, shouts of blood rain. He babbles that crimson drizzle fell over his turnip fields. Livestock panicked, chickens lay rotten eggs mid-cluck. Word spreads among caravan like fire on parchment. Omens blamed on your powders traveling by wind. You ride ahead to investigate, find nothing but red dust blown from collapsed dye house upriver. Still, rumor gallops faster than truth. Thornbridge's envoys surely stoke each ember. High Lake appears day 6, ramparts of gray limestone perched above tidal marsh, crenellations bristling like jaw teeth. Market thrums beyond gate, jugglers, swine merchants, petitioners with baskets of eel pies. Duke Jared's banner, white tower on blue field, snaps overhead. Your convoy halts beneath Barbican, where crossbowmen peer down. Herald reads baronial letter of passage. Portcullis rises grumbling. Inside Outer Bailey, Thornbridge's retinue already lounges near Falcon Mews. Lord Monfrey, lean, hawkish, leans on ivory cane, smirks when he spots cages. Ah, the conjurer arrives with menagerie, he drawls loud enough for gawkers. His retainers laugh like sheet metal. You dismount, dustcoat, and bow just low enough to satisfy etiquette, then speak clearly. Merely tools of a trade your lordship does not yet comprehend. Monfrey's gaze flicks to Edlin, lingers a beat too long. You place yourself between, another trap diffused. Protocol dictates you lodge in Southward House while accusations are prepared. 2 days until formal inquest. Monfrey capitalizes on interval. Paid criers roam streets warning of cursed dust that turns rats into demons, citing sheep born with extra tails in Thornbridge hamlets. Peasants murmur prayers when you pass. Some throw sprigs of wormwood at your boots. Rick Frenches. Len kicks the herbs aside, muttering curses of her own. Edlin triggers counteroffensive. She purchases an evening slot at High Lake's amphitheater, popular stage for sword dancers and miracle plays, then invites townsfolk to free demonstration of humane rat abolition. Flyers flutter from balconies, promising no witchery, no blood, only wisdom and ferrets. The Duke cannot prohibit. Spectacle is taxed event, filling coffers. Demonstration night bathed in torchlight. Arena floor lined with waist-high lattice so crowds see clearly but remain safe. Mira steps forth, voice projected like chapel bell, recounting monastery plague halted by your guild. Goen slams a sprung trap, tin whistle shrills, audience gasps then claps. Twins unroll canvas map showing rat burrow networks beneath High Lake's grain granaries, produced that morning with chalk dust and listening horns. Murmurs ripple. Folks knew barns had pests, but not scale. Then you appear, holding Grimlet's sleek daughter, Pip. You sprinkle powder circle, release 10 captive rats in center. They scurry, sniff, then freeze as ferret darts loops through.
Chase lasts heartbeats. 5 caught, 3 leap into powder, convulse, and still. Remaining 2 dive toward lattices, but are netted by twins. You speak calmly over scene. Observe, not curse, not devilry, only nature's balance and measured science. Would you rather pestilence or protection?
Cheers, Bubble, tentative then full. Yet from stands Lord Montfrey's steward bellows, "Sleight of hand! Those vermin were trained!" He hurls apple that smacks Pip's flank. Ferret squeals, chaos teeters. Gowan steps forward, cracking knuckles. You restrain him. Instead, you invite Stuart into arena to choose any random rat from reserve cage. Crowd roars approval. Sweating, he selects hulking specimen with scarred ear. You introduce brand new ferret, Hatch, barely broken to harness. Gate drops, rat lunges to bite, Hatch leaps, struggle dusty, but ends with clean snap. Crowd explodes, doubters cowed. The Duke's Chamberlain, watching from balcony, nods and departs. Report to master. Victory tastes sweet until midnight summons from Castle Constable yanks you from bed. His Grace seeks private interview now. You follow torchlit corridors into Tower Library, aromatic of vellum and rose oil. Duke Gerard stands by moonlit window, clad in plain tunic, eyes like slick slate. He motions silence, gestures to parchment stack, bearing Montfrey's seal. Letters verify your powder's use, hellebore and camphor, acknowledged toxins. If trace amounts seep into river, my fisheries perish. His tone even. You respond that dosage is carefully calculated. Water dilutes to harmless parts. He counters plague rumors. You present monastery affidavits signed by abbot. He reads, lips pursed. Yet politics outweigh proof, he admits at length. Montfrey offers me levy concessions if I render judgment against you. The crown's treasury lean after recent wars. Persuade me otherwise. Not bribery, a transaction of duty. You propose training High Lakes wardens, gifting first year of crescent powders free, boosting grain yields to export, Duke profits double levy. Also share scroll copies of Flea Theory, giving High Lake medical prestige. Gerard's eyebrow lifts. Legacy appeals to men with no sons. He pours 2 cups of spiced cider. Conversation turns to engineering. He adores aqueducts. You mention earthquake-proof pyramid footings from choral manuscripts. Dawn nears before agreement inked. Montfrey's charges dismissed. Crescent Guild granted ducal charter across realm in exchange for yearly symposium. However, politics unbeheaded often regrow. Gerard warns Montfrey won't relent. He cultivates zealot bishops who find heresy in herb lists. Public favor must stay bright. Edlin plots traveling fairs. You craft pamphlets. Simple woodcut guides showing proper application, disclaimers. After inquest day, courtyard packed. Herald reads verdict. Accusations unproved. Crescent endorsed. Montfrey's jaw works silently. Crowd cheers, apprentices beam. Yet when you lead caravan out gate, crossbow bolt thunks cartside inches from rick. You dive, spot shooter fleeing into tannery alleys. Guards give chase, fail. Message clear. Travel home slower, wary nights. Halfway, dark shape lies across road. Severed ferret head spiked on stake. Banner scrap reading vermin spawn. Gowan snarls, but you pocket head gently. Dignity for fallen creature, and bury beneath oak with whispered thanks. At castle return, celebrations subdued. Edlin convenes war council. Need secure safe houses, Diversify allies. She suggests outreach to university apothecaries. You recommend forging rat-proof grain silos as demonstration of constructive prowess, lessening reliance on poisons and calming critics. Mira unveils prototype. Clay jars lined with tin sheets, lids weighted by river stones. Rats slide off slick metal, can't gnaw. Steward grudgingly funds pilot.
Winter creeps. With stores secured, rats migrate to village lofts. Your guild deploys nightly patrols, earning copper per kill. Sustainable trade. Yet shadows of witch hunter rumor spread still. Chaplain intercepts letter from bishopric. Inquiry into unnatural familiars, ferrets, used in rites. He warns Edlin, her noble reputation could tarnish if linked to heresy. One snowy eve, courier bearing bishop's crest arrives demanding you appear before ecclesiastical panel in fortnight. 2 tribunals in 1 year. Exhaustion sets heavy. You study letter, charges vague, meddling with order of divine creation. You realize they target not poisons, but entire concept of human rat equilibrium. Church perceives domain over pestilence as God's scourge, not man's to master. Strategy shifts. Science must wear cloak of faith to survive. You craft sermon analogies. Joseph spared Egypt by storing grain. Noah managed beasts. Pest control stewardship, not defiance, but obedience. Chaplain agrees to coach rhetoric. He sees chance to shine as moderating theologian. Training apprentices continues. Rick now handles Grimlet's latest kit, Snow, with gentle authority. Lean designs trap-releasing water bucket onto rats, live capture for study. Innovation blossoms amid adversity. 2 nights before episcopal departure, you explore vacant watchtower, rumored rat haunt. Climb spiral stairs lit by tallow stub. Midway, floorboard snaps. You plunge to cellar stacked with rotting barley. Rats here, massive, survivors of Queen's lineage, perhaps. They swarm. Alone, you brandish torch, kick, but dozens scrabble. One leaps, teeth find flesh above boot. Pain spikes. You drop powder pouch, but flame ignites dust, flash blinds. Rats flee squealing, but you collapse coughing, leg bleeding. Awake in infirmary hours later, poultice stinging. Edlin at bedside, eyes glistening worry. She mutters about hubris and how guild needs leader alive. Bite festers, plague fear resurges. Chaplain brings relic shard, presses to wound. Willen applies poultice of garlic and honey. Fever dreams follow, tunnels of boon, queen rat laughing crown of thorns, barren sun walking watery corridor. 3 days pass, fever breaks, bite healing. You realize mortality could end guild before dawn. Must decentralize knowledge. You gather apprentices, dictate catalog of techniques, mixtures, ethics. Scribes ink copies. Journey to Bishop City proceeds with limp but firm resolve. Along road, you orchestrate public sermons on stewardship, giving free demonstrations in churchyards, inviting priests to bless traps. Some accept, others spit, but seeds sow. Panel convenes in vaulted hall heavy with incense. Bishops line marble dais, parchment lists. Opposition preacher argues animals tools of divine punishment. You respond calmly, Scripture's dominion charge. Introduce testimonies from monasteries, Duke's charter, chaplain's endorsement. Present healed bite wound as sign cooperation with nature, not sorcery. Debate lasts hours. Final prayer recited. Verdict, not heretical, but subject to ecclesiastical oversight.
Guild must tithe 10th of profits to alms for plague victims. Acceptable. Return caravan welcomed by council. Steward smirks at tithe cut, but Baron praises peacemaking.
But that night, Edlin reveals letter from coastal port. Ships from distant continent report rats immune to common hellebore, larger still. Crescent needed abroad. Horizon widens.
Exhausted, yet exhilarated, you stare into forge flames, imagining fleets bearing your crescent banner, continents sharing knowledge. But first, restful sleep. The harbor at Dunmere was a brazen mouth of masts and tar-stained hulls, spitting gulls into a fog the color of pewter. Somewhere beyond the clamor of rigging and the cough of winches, you could already smell the other continent. Warm, resinous woods, peppery cargoes, diseases no physician in these parts could yet name. Duke Gerard's sealed commission lay heavy in the inner pocket of your leather coat, its wax crest flecking red against the wool while you supervised the loading list. 20 crates of iron jaw traps, 7 barrels of crescent powder packed in waxed linen sacks, 24 ferrets nestled in straw-lined hutches, a brass astrolabe on loan from High Lakes Observatory, and 4 copies of the newly scribed Treatise on Vermin Governance, each bound in calfskin, penned by Mira's steady hand, and stamped with the Guild's silver crescent.
Edlin strode across the wharf on boots freshly greased for sea salt, reading off manifest entries, while the twins, Rick and Len, argued about center of mass for the trap crates. Beyond them, Gowan haggled with a rope merchant whose cheeks were so puffed with tobacco he looked like he might float away on the tide. Willen, breathing through a camphor-soaked cloth, ushered ferrets from cart cages into shipboard hutches. Each animal carried a tiny copper tag etched with its name, a promise that living tools deserved remembrance.
You paused a moment at the gangplank, hand resting on splintering rail. 6 years earlier you'd crept through castle cellars armed with nothing but a twine net and a candle stub. Now you commanded a floating arsenal and bore letters patent broad enough to shake towns you'd never seen. But victory was brittle. Reports from merchant captains spoke of black-furred giants gnawing through hemp mooring lines, of sleek gray ship rats capable of swimming half a league, immune to common powders and quick to feast on bilge and biscuit alike. One log mentioned a child bitten in sleep, wound ringed with pustules that spread like ink in water. Whatever bred on the far coast was learning, adapting, perhaps guided by chance, perhaps by something akin to the queen you'd burned beneath the monastery floor.
Departure bells tolled bronze and sorrowful. Chaplain Osric arrived last minute to present a bleached scroll of blessings in case any still doubted heaven's approval. He intoned protective psalms over each ferret hutch and pressed a final reliquary shard into your palm. Your collection of sacred splinters was starting to rattle like dice, but comfort came in odd forms. As the ship's mate bellowed for crew to cast off, Edlin squeezed your forearm. "Remember," she murmured, "this voyage is knowledge first, triumph second. Do not trade one queen for another."
The sea drake lurched from the pier in a roar of surf and a creak of pine. You watched the shoreline reduce to parchment silhouettes. Watchtowers, lighthouse flame winking farewell, gulls looping like scraps of torn letter. Inland hills folded into mist, and with them the familiar rustle of Castle Crescent's halls, the smell of barley porridge, the safe geometry of known tunnels. Ahead lay only charts inked by sailors who counted distance in graves. Molding? Open ocean days blurred between hardtack meals and condensation-beaded brass instruments. Your guild quarters were cramped, traps stacked under hammocks, powder sealed in tarred barrels lashed to beams, ferret hutch smell mingling with bilge water and tar. Still, there was work. Mira recorded salinity and temperature each dawn, while Rick sketched rat carcasses the sailors pulled from scuppers. They'd been laying cheap snap traps along bulwarks for years, but snap mechanisms failed nightly. Rats large as kittens dragged them away, chewing through pine like fruit.
On the 12th day, a shout rose from the net deck. A sailor flung something onto planking. A rat with glossy pitch fur, tail stubby and scabbed, eyes clouded white. The thing was dead, but not by blade. Half its head sagged soft as dough, flesh melted. You cut a sliver with your scalpel, noted the strange scent, like nettle sap and iron filings, and preserved the tissue in brandy. Willen suggested fungal infection. Mira suspected alkaloid runoff from exotic cargo. Edlin simply stared, thoughtful, at the stump of tail. "It's been fighting," she murmured. "Maybe cannibal packs. They cull each other, breed out weakness."
That night, the sea drake pitched through black swells under a moon like a chipped coin. You woke to frantic bell clangs, hold breach. Rushing below, you found 3 barrels gnawed open, powder seeping onto planks in sullen gray dunes. Ferrets shrieked in their hutches. Pip had a bleeding ear. Twins wrestled a broken trap still clamped on a rat's hind quarters. Beast long dead, but jaws fixed in silent snarl. Everyone worked by lantern, scooping powder with wooden shovels into spare casks while Goen hammered planks over the hole. In the flicker, you glimpsed scratch lines on bulkhead. Clusters of them in patterns, almost rune-like. A message or random gnaw. Unnerved, you traced one cluster with torchlight. It formed a spiral, narrowing to a point. Morning dawned sickly green. Captain Haldor called you to quarterdeck. "Storm blew in while you were making your racket," he said, eyes red-rimmed from sleepless vigil. "2 days of rough water coming. We lose cargo, we lose lives. You offered double pay to any deckhand willing to help secure your barrels. The man accepted, though some spat over the side after whispering about cursed dust." Storm swelled midday. Waves slammed hull. Masts shuddered like skeletal lances. Below, ferrets whined. Powders threatened to slurry. You ordered apprentices lashed into hammocks, traps wedged with wedges and tar cloth. All evening you chanted tally lists against thunder. 212 spring traps, 18 rolling barrels, 23 ferrets alive, 2 injured, 1 missing. At second dog watch, Lena discovered absence. Hatch's cage door splintered. You followed droppings and tufts of brown fur through corridor until prow pitching nearly hurled you into bulkhead. Under slatted ladder, you found Hatch crouched over a rat corpse, bigger than itself, both dead, necks locked in final bite. Loyalty or instinct, the ferret had hunted even in chaos. You wrapped them together in sailcloth, unsure which deserved more honor. By dawn, the storm relented. 2 sailors had broken arms. 1 had vanished overboard. But Sea Drake creaked onward, east wind now carrying humid breath of the distant coast. Crew muttered about ill-omened vermin and dead ferrets. You led a simple burial at sea for Hatch and her quarry, reading both bestiary verse and chaplain's psalm. Sailors relaxed slightly when you promised double-strength powder sweeps each dusk. 1. Landfall came in haze, jungle shoreline where mangrove roots tangled like cooking pots, and above them cliffs draped with vines the color of ink. Port Nelvaro was less a town than a tangle of wooden piers and stilt huts built over brackish lagoon to dodge malaria clouds. Dockhands wore reed masks against mosquitoes. Incense braziers burned day and night. Governor Celine de Arteaga, a woman in lacquered breastplate and broad-brimmed hat, greeted ambassadors, but blinked at sight of ferret hutches. "Your reputation preceded you by a month," she said. "Captain of the Osprey trade ship swore you'd tame our devils. Come, see them."
She led you past warehouses stacked with cinnamon bark, bundles of parrot feathers, wax-sealed jars of ambergris. Behind stone wall lay the granary district, every structure belly up like gutted whales. Wooden floors chewed, rice rotting, weevils swirling. In center of one silo gaped a pit where earth itself seemed eaten away. Workers claimed rats drank brine and didn't die. Governor waved at gnawed mast beams. They scuttle rigging, sink boats at anchor. 2 infants bitten last week. We tried cats. Cats vanish.
Twins performed soil chalk test. Lime flared, revealing warrens spiraling deep. The patterns matched spiral scratches aboard Sea Drake. "This colony is coordinated," Edlin whispered. "Intelligence beyond mere scavenging." At her words, memory of Queen's hypnotic gaze pricked your nape. Could some lineage carry cunning like heirloom? Your guild set base in an abandoned customs warehouse overlooking pier canals. Mira brewed fresh powder using local kino bark for bitterness. Willen fashioned watertight clay bombs for tossing into tunnels. Rick and Lane drilled dockhands on trap setting. Gowan recruited blacksmiths to craft larger, spring-reinforced jaws. Governor provided 20 crossbow guards. Yet at twilight, the rats came like smoke. First assault, a grain barge tied to pier. Dockhands heard splashes, then boards snapped. Rats erupted from water, dripping salt. Bigger than any castle pest, some as a tavern cat. Fur sleek, tails stub-bitten, sign of constant combat. They ignored torches, leapt for nets of rice. Your crew arrived to find sailors hurling oars like spears. You lobbed a clay bomb. Explosion popped salt water into steam, scattering half the swarm. Ferrets surged next, Pip with bandaged ear leading. They darted under crates, driving rats into trapline where iron jaws clanged. Within minutes, decks slicked with bodies. But as you surveyed victory, a rat on a mooring post balanced upright on hind legs, watching. Lantern gleam showed pale scar across its muzzle. An old burn, maybe. It met your stare, black eyes reflecting flame, then slipped silently into lagoon.
Diane. Success bought breathing room. Governor granted you authority to direct sanitation citywide. You mapped refuse pits, taught households elevated storage. Mira brewed herbal flea wash distributed through church alms. For a month, bite reports fell. Ferrets patrolled nightly with lantern-bearing apprentices. Trade ships resumed loading spices. Morale soared, until the day the beagle died.
Captain Haldor's hunting dog, left ashore, was found beneath pilings, throat torn. Its belly distended, fur matted with dark slime. Rick dissected under tarp. Stomach contained half-digested rats, poison-resistant. But lungs black with spores, unknown fungus. Lean scraped sample. Under lens, gift from Duke's scholars, filaments writhed. This fungus, not poison immunity, allowed rats to survive powders. Chewed hellebore, then excreted toxins through symbiosis. If rats spread spores, city's people at risk. You convened council, Edlin, governor, harbor physician, chaplain from Mission Church. Plan emerged. Burn nests, flood tunnels with salt water, deploy antifungal tincture brewed from blue gum resin. Governor balked. Fires near warehouses threaten entire port. Yet alternative worse. After heated debate, she yielded, but insisted holy procession bless purge to appease townsfolk. Night of reckoning, drums echoed across lagoon. Priests swung censers, your guild donned waxed cloaks. Crews poured whale oil along tunnel mouths, set torches. Flames roared, orange ribbons licking timbers. Crackling air carried squeals, hordes bursting out, fleeing to water. Archers fired, ferrets pounced, powder bombs thudded. You spotted the scar-muzzle sentinel racing seawall. You pursued, heart hammering. It slipped through drainage grate into catacombs beneath old fort. You followed alone, crawling torch first. Catacombs stank of guano and brine. Walls bore spirals etched deep, but center chamber opened into air pocket lit by dim glow of lichen. There sat the sentinel rat on stone slab before mound of bones, animal and human. Behind, fungal growth pulsed violet, coating walls in veined patterns. Rat regarded you, unafraid, as if presenting shrine. For a moment you sensed consciousness bridging chasm, contemplation mirrored. Then Pip darted in, launched. Battle swift, sentinel slain. You tore sample of fungus, retreating as smoke seeped tunnels. Outside, dawn paled, fires dying, city haze of ash and steam. Many rats drowned or burned, others fled to jungle. Governor hailed purge as triumph. Yet you trudged to quarters, mind heavy. Fungus symbiosis meant battle never over. Environment breeds new weapons. Cap, weeks past rebuilding. Infested granaries reconstructed of stone with tin-lined walls per your design. Guild-trained local catchers left them ferret litters. Governor issued decree banning open trash pits. Your ship stood ready homeward, hull retard, holds filled with spices, but crew restless, fear of fungus unseen. Before departure, you climbed bluff overlooking lagoon, carrying small casket. Inside lay ashes of sentinel rat and Hatch the ferret. Edlin joined, silent. You dug shallow pit beneath jacaranda bloom, placed casket, and spoke not of conquest but of cycle, predator, prey, profit perhaps. You poured crescent powder circle, lit with spark. Ash spiraled, wind carrying gray into sunrise. Back aboard Sea Drake, you penned final chapter of treatise, adaptive vectors and mutualistic pathogens. You cautioned that war on vermin is dialogue, not decree. Rats evolve, so must guardians. In closing lines you wrote that victory lies not solely in eradication, but in equilibrium, guided by knowledge, compassion, vigilance. Voyage home, calm. Apprentices studied charts. Mira cultivated antifungal cultures in glass vials, hoping to craft cures. Edlin drafted charter for Order of the Crescent Wayfarers, envisioning guild cells in every port. Gowan repaired traps, now lining jaws with copper plates resistant to spore corrosion. When Castle Crescent's banners appeared on horizon, shore throngs awaited. Word of triumph spread through merchant letters faster than ship. Baron embraced you, astonished by crates of spice tithe that would fund granary fortifications. Duke Gerard's emissary arrived within hour, delivering scroll naming you Master Conservator of the Royal Granaries, granting lands adjoining marsh to build research cloister. That night, feast in great hall, burned late candles. Minstrels sang of ferret valor. Steward, drunk, toasted your powders. Chaplain led prayer of thanksgiving that called you shepherd of lesser beasts. Yet amid applause, you imagined violet fungus blooming in distant tunnels.
New sentinels learning to read human patterns.
Later, courtyard quiet, Edlin found you staring at stars. "There will be others," you said. She nodded. "Good. Our story thrives on others." She handed fresh banner, silver crescent flanked by twin ferrets, beneath them open book. "Legacy, not legend," she whispered.
You tucked banner under arm, inhaled night air tinged with honeysuckle and forge smoke. Tomorrow, letters must be written. To High Lake scholars, Port Nelvaro catchers, monasteries seeking guidance. Powders refined, fungi studied, silos built. Circle never ends, nor should it. Still, for this sliver of moonlit calm, you allowed yourself grace. The castle lay hushed, rats wary of new traps. Apprentices dreamed in barracks of oceans and hidden tunnels. Ferrets curled in straw boxes, bellies rising in steady cadence. You closed eyes, listening. No skittering in walls, only hearth crackle and wind through arrow slits. For once, the dark was just dark. Not an enemy, but a quiet friend restrung. And in that steady hush, you knew the work would continue long after your hands stilled, carried by those you taught, by ink pressed in calfskin, by every ferret tag etched and remembered. A biting tale, yes, but also a breathing one, alive in each cautious footstep through midnight corridors, in each lantern lowered into burrow, in each small courage that keeps plague at bay. Thus the castle rat-catcher hunted, learned, and finally understood. Mastery is vigilance married to humility. The darkness will always harbor teeth, but light, guided, patient, can shape its own resilient kingdom. And so ends this chronicle, though the skitter of paws beyond torchlight begins anew each night, inviting every weary dreamer to listen, to rise, and to guard the grain against the gnawing world.